Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be looking at my AncestryDNA ethnicity estimate. So just to recap, I've taken autosomal DNA tests with 4 of the major companies. That's MyHeritage, AncestryDNA, Living DNA and Family Tree DNA. The 23andMe test I haven't yet taken, but I will be taking that in the future. This video is not sponsored, so I'm buying all of these kits with my own money. So in last week's video, I looked at my MyHeritage ethnicity estimate results. I've put the link to that video in the description box, and I highly suggest that you watch that video first because these videos form part of a series in which I'm comparing all of the different companies. And also last week, I talked a bit about just generally ethnicity estimates and how they work and how companies use reference populations and things like that. So I highly suggest you watch the other video first. Okay, so today I'll be looking at my AncestryDNA results. I purchased this kit for $119, that's Australian dollars. That included shipping. I purchased that during one of Ancestry's sales. So normally that would cost $158 including shipping. So it's highly worth waiting for the sales. I'll put a link in the description box for if you'd like to purchase one of these kits. I'll also put a link in the description box to the unboxing video in case you're curious to see what was inside the kit. But basically this one was just you spit into a little vial and then send that back to them and they analyze that. So let's get to the results.
Previously on Vanessa Incorporated, Scotland and Ireland took charge. Scandinavia discussed the hit TV show Vikings. Greece felt that 2.3% was an underrepresentation of their interests. And Italy. Italy. I love pasta, don't you?
Okay, it turns out you guys are all fired. There's a new shareholder. This is so uncivilized. You haven't seen the last of me. Hey! All right, let's have a warm welcome for England and Western Europe. Thank you. I'll be running the meetings from now on. Thanks. Hey, what? Yeah, as the new majority shareholder, I'm the boss. You only have a few more shares than me. We're practically 50-50. Yeah, but not quite. So I'm taking over. Yeah, well, that's something that you do very well. What's that supposed to mean? Just what you think it means. Okay. Anyway, back to me. I'm not sure how I was left out of the last meeting. We have plenty of documented English heritage, so I'm not sure how MyHeritage missed us, but I think you'll be seeing a lot more of us from now on. Western Europe never agreed to this merger with England. We can't all be in charge. This is a company, for God's sake. Anyway, we've traced several of our lines back to England, both through convicts and free settlers. Plus, we love the Bronte sisters and British comedy and a good cup of tea. Anyway, we've still got 2 more DNA tests to look at, so let's focus, people. So let's just review my ethnicity results. This week with AncestryDNA, I obviously only had 2 ethnicities, which was quite different to last week's MyHeritage, which had 4 ethnicities, and they were different. I obviously still had Irish and Scottish in there, but it dropped from a whopping like 80%, which was in MyHeritage, to 47% with Ancestry. So then England, Wales and Northwestern Europe had a pretty large chunk of 53%. I realized I kind of ignored Wales last week. So last week with MyHeritage, my result was Ireland, Scotland and Wales, and that was approximately 80%. This week with Ancestry, Ireland and Scotland was its own, and then Wales was linked in with England and Northwestern Europe. You would almost think that Wales was the key, so I had a larger percentage when Wales was in with Ireland and Scotland, and then there was a shift to a larger percentage with England and Northwestern Europe. The reason that I kind of ignored this though was because I haven't found any Welsh heritage in any of my trees. This doesn't mean that it's not there, but if it is there, I think it's fairly far back and it doesn't account for the large difference between those numbers. So this is why I've kind of put Wales to the side. Okay, that being said, I do have documented English ancestry. So I found it really odd that my heritage came back with 0% England. I'm not surprised that Ancestry had some English, but I thought 53% was far too much. My estimate looking at my trees would be that I would have maybe 25% at the maximum. So I have to assume that this is looking further back in the past and just picking up on Northwestern European DNA. So according to AncestryDNA, their tests cover from about several hundred years ago all the way up to over 1,000 years ago. So it's most likely that my England, Northwestern Europe sort of DNA is coming from some time further back than my tree has managed to reach. My English lines don't tend to go back past about the 1700s and maybe at the maximum 1600s. So that DNA is definitely older. So as you can also see, my results include a few communities. I think communities are really interesting. They're not exactly ethnicities, and they're calculated in a slightly different way, but they can be really helpful. So Ancestry identified groups of people who had similar DNA, and then they called these groups clusters. So then they linked each cluster to a geographic region, and that forms a community. They did this by comparing people's DNA samples to their family trees. Of course, there's plenty of errors in people's family trees, but they corrected for any outliers. So the communities are actually fairly accurate, and some people even think they're more accurate than the ethnicities. So not everyone has matches with communities, and some people match with several. So there's no rule there. You may match with some, you might not. So the communities that are matched with me were Scottish Lowlands, Northern England and Northern Ireland, and then Scottish Central Lowlands, and then lastly Australia, New South Wales, British settlers. These are interesting because also if you click on them, it gives you a timeline that you can click on and see what's happening in that community at that time, which also which of your ancestors from your tree might have been there experiencing life at that time and that place. So for example, if I click on my community, Australia, New South Wales, British settlers, and then I click on the year 1800, it'll give me information on the right hand side about what was happening at that place in that time. And then we have a map that shows my ancestors moving from the UK across to Sydney and then to broader New South Wales. So those numbers on the map are individuals in my tree that fit into this community. So see if I click on the 7, it'll show me like 7 of my ancestors that were still in the UK in 1800. And alternatively, if I click on the 4, it'll show me some that have arrived in Australia. Just the same, I can look at a different community, let's say the Scottish Lowlands in 1800, and see the migration from Scotland to the United States, and you can see one of my ancestors right there. Now, if you want more information on the science behind how AncestryDNA calculates their ethnicity estimates and their communities, I highly suggest you read their white papers. That's available on their website. It goes into more depth about the science behind all of that. But do let me know if you want me to get into more depth here. So if you want me to do a video talking about Ancestry's white papers or going into a bit more depth with the science, please let me know. I thought that it might be a bit heavy for these kind of videos, but if it is something that you'd like to see, let me know in the comments or send me a message on one of my social media outlets and I will make that video for you. So the last thing I'll show you relating to the AncestryDNA results is my parents' DNA results. So they've both taken tests with AncestryDNA as well. So firstly, my mum's result, as you can see, she has one extra ethnicity that I didn't have, and this was France. She has a small percentage of French that didn't show up in my test. That might be just an anomaly, but I suspect that it's accurate. Being one generation further back from me, her DNA is going to pick up on a little more detail than mine. So if you think about it, each generation down is more diluted in their DNA than the generation before it, because each person's inheriting DNA from their mother and DNA from their father, which means you're going to get 50% of each, but then your children are only going to get 50% of yours, and then the next generation down will only get 50% of that. So if you've got older relatives, parents, grandparents, the further back you test, actually the more detail you're going to get out of those tests. As you can see, my mum also has more detailed communities. She has Munster Island, and even more specifically North Munster. Like me, she also has the Scottish Lowlands, Wales and Northwestern Europe, but she also has extra sub-regions of England, Scotland border and Northumberland. So she also has some additional communities here. That's Australian, New South Wales, British settlers, and from the United States she has New England settlers, including Massachusetts, Vermont and New Hampshire settlers, and also northeastern state settlers, New England and eastern Great Lakes settlers. So obviously I have the same DNA as my mum, but her DNA is that bit more sensitive, picking up on things that mine didn't. Okay, so now my dad, he has 2 extra ethnicities that I don't have. That's Norway and France, and just like my mum, I think that his DNA is just a bit more sensitive than mine, and it's picking up on more from our distant past. He also has a community here that I didn't, which is Scottish Highlands and Islands, and within that Argyll and Bute. I hope I'm pronouncing these names properly. We definitely had ancestors there. I've traced it in our family tree. However, his DNA was stronger in that it actually matched with this community. And he also, like me, matched with the Australian, New South Wales, British settlers, but his DNA picked up on a more specific region in New South Wales, which was the Northern Tablelands. We've definitely traced some of our ancestors into that region, so it's not surprising, but once again, his DNA was picking up on things that mine didn't. So just to reiterate, if you have relatives from older generations, it's definitely worth getting them tested because their DNA is going to be more sensitive. Okay, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. I'm here every Friday. We'll be doing more of these DNA videos over the coming weeks, so stay tuned. The 23andMe test is also coming up once I have the funds. So if you'd like to help support this channel, head to Patreon. The link's in the description box. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next video. Bye.
Next time on Vanessa Incorporated, there are talks of mergers. The Mediterranean stage a comeback, and East Europe makes an appearance. Stay tuned for all the drama.